ready to fly at the Grundig Snowboarding FIS World Cup. And check this out. It is one of the most dangerous sports on what some call the most treacherous course in the world. Controlled madness at 70 miles an hour. The Jeff Bodine Bobsled Challenge. The Jamaicans, the Americans, the Swiss, Germans, and Canadians. Who's got what it takes to go all out on the sub-zero jagged ice track at Lake Placid? All this and more today on Prime's Olympic Odyssey. Snowboarding. You tend to forget that summer is actually right around the corner. Our Olympic countdown clock just keeps on ticking. And would you believe it? In just a little over a year, the centennial of the modern Olympic Games will take place in Atlanta, Georgia. And this July 21st, 3,600 athletes will gather in Denver for the 14th U.S. Olympic Festival. And you can see it all right here on Prime. Now, our question for today. What does NASCAR superstar Jeff Bodine and the U.S. bobsled team have in common? Well, here's our bobsled expert, John Morgan, to tell you the answer.
Bobsledding was conceived before the turn of the century in St. Moritz, Switzerland, when they put two sleds together, and the early rules were then that five-person teams had to contain at least two women. The name bobsledding itself comes from the early days when teams at the start would bob forward to gain momentum, hence the name bobsledding as we know it today. In the early years, USA bobsledders dominated the sport, winning gold medals at the Winter Olympics in 1928, 32, 1936, and 1948 in St. Moritz. Since then, the medal results have been on a decline, and in 1956 we won our last medal, a bronze in the four-man at Cortina. It was also the last time when USA bobsledders drove an American sled at the Winter Olympic Games. An engineer and physicist, Dr. Art Tyler, designed and drove his own sled to the last Olympic medal in '56 and the USA's last World Championship in bobsledding in 1959 at St. Moritz, Switzerland. Since then, USA bobsledders have been also-rans, winning no Olympic medals in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but they came pretty close at Calgary in 1988, when Brent Rushlaw missed a bronze in the four-man by only 0.02 of a second. The 1992 Winter Olympics in Albertville, France, was a new era for the United States bobsled program. No, we did not win any medals, as Brian Scheimer and football superstar Herschel Walker could only finish 7th. But an interested TV viewer at those games, NASCAR racer Jeff Bodine, felt it was time to take some pride in America and help the underfunded USA bobsled program.
Watching the Olympics with my family, I saw our guys just couldn't quite make it, couldn't get up on that podium and win some medals, and wanted to find out why. And I talked to a friend about it, and he called up here to Lake Placid, and he said, you know, they give rides up there. You want to go for a ride in a bobsled? I said, sure. So we came up and went for a ride, and actually drove a sled up here, Bruce Roselli's sled, and fell in love with the sport. Learned about some of the obstacles that our athletes have to try to hurdle to be an Olympic athlete in bobsledding for us. And once I learned some of those things, looked at the bobsleds, learned that they were made in Europe, I said, boy, we've got some of the best technicians in the whole world, fabricators in the whole world building race cars. I said, I know we can build a better bobsled than what's sitting here. Plus, it'll be made in America, which I thought, I still think is very important. I think that's a key to this whole project, that our American athletes are using American-made equipment now.
So after that first trip to Lake Placid where Jeff drove a sled, he turned to the people at Chassis Dynamics for some help. 6 months after his first ride and $130,000 later, Jeff Bodine and Chassis Dynamics' Bob Cuneo went off to Calgary for the initial testing of the sled in November of 1992. Team Bodine was now very positive.
Believe me, they did a better job than I even thought they could. Obviously, I wouldn't have spent a lot of money with them and hired them if I didn't think they could do a good job. But they went way beyond what I thought they could do. This sled is awesome.
2 months later in Lake Placid, New York, Jeff and his team from Chessie Dynamics rolled it out for the press to look at with a fresh new paint job. USA bobsledders not only gave the project a thumbs up, but called the sled technically superior to anything else on the planet.
We have the sled of the future. They have put together the ultimate sled. Compared to what we are driving in today, this sled, it's the difference between a Yugo and a Porsche, the way it's built. A bobsled, it doesn't even have an engine, but it costs more than a car.
We'll see how the U.S. team fares with its new high-tech sled when we return to Prime's Olympic Odyssey on this regional sport.
In Lake Placid, New York, site of the 1932 and 1980 Winter Olympic Games, welcome to Prime Olympic Showcase coverage of the Bodine Bobsled Challenge. Hello again, everyone. I'm Tim Singer. Well, it's been a tough past 12 months for the bobsledders of the world, a busy 12 months, the Lillehammer Olympics just about a year ago, and then they've just come off of a very grueling World Cup and World Championship circuit. But all of the best drivers, the medal winners from all of those events, are now in Lake Placid to take part in the Bodine Bobsled Challenge. Also in Lake Placid, as always, is my partner, John Morgan. And John, they've been very serious about their sliding over the past year, but here in Placid, it's sort of an end-of-the-year bash while the drivers and sleds dash for the cash.
Yeah, $25,000 in prize money. The event's named after Jeff Bodine, the guy who's building the U.S. sleds now. And most of these Europeans are over here renting sleds from the U.S. team and getting acclimated to the Lake Placid track. And again, like you said, it's an end-of-the-season affair, and they're over here hoping to win a little money, have a good time.
Well, they are having a good time, but we've seen some very serious faces at the top of this track because this is, without question, one of the most dangerous tracks in the world.
Yeah, Tim, in the last 4 Olympics, they built these combo tracks for bobsledding in luge and Sarajevo and Calgary and La Plagne, France, and in Lillehammer. And these tracks are really, really too safe. To me, bobsledding needs a dangerous aspect of the sport, the way Lake Placid used to be, Cortina, Trevigny, St. Moritz, Garmisch, the old bobsled tracks of the world. Most of the time on these combo tracks, the last couple Olympics, we noticed the guys walking around, slapping each other high fives. It's a great day to be there type thing. Up here at Lake Placid, though, you see them walking around. It's a very nervous affair situation thing because it's a man versus the mountain competition because they know at any time the mountain can rise up and bite them.
Well, we saw proof of that in the early heat action. Just how dangerous is Lake Placid? Well, after one heat of action, the Americans stood 1 and 3 in the standings. Then in the second heat, veteran Jim Herbrick, who knows this track so well, ran into a bit of trouble.
Long straightaway below shady corner. He looks pretty good here, Timmy. Now in this 2-corner combination, little less. Now watch the sled hit and go in the belly part of this corner. That's where he gets in trouble. He's over into zigzag. Look at that shot. Oh, 70 miles an hour upside down. And believe me, the sled doesn't slow down that much, Timmy. Both athletes were smart enough to keep themselves tucked in. But look at the way he plays with the ropes right there, Timmy. That's a steering adjustment that he made. That's when he got himself in trouble. I think that's driver error all the way.
Both Herbrick and brakeman James Purvis wisely tucked themselves deep inside that sled. That's really the only action they had at this point.
Look at that shot, Timmy. That's 65, 70 miles an hour upside down in probably the most dangerous 2-corner combination in the world. Now they're really upside down in their helmets.
Herbrick from Winchester, Massachusetts, Purvis from Brentwood, New York. They were administered to afterwards. Both athletes remarkably were okay. And Jim Herbrick, the 3-time Olympian, the scholar and the athlete from Harvard, graciously talked to us right after the run.
Once I was able to get out of the sled, my first thought was, first of all, where was he and what condition he was in. Definitely, I'm really concerned for the crew. They worked very hard for me during the year, and this is not the way I want to pay him back. So I want to make sure he's okay, and once I found out it's okay, then I can start worrying about other things.
Herbrick out of the competition. We're midway through the Bodine Challenge. Wolfgang Hoppe of Germany leading the way, a tenth of the second back. USA 1 driven by Tuffy Latour. Much more sliding to come.
You loved him in Cool Runnings, the movie. Now you get him for real in Lake Placid, the real deal. The Jamaican bobsled team. Next.
Back here in Lake Placid, New York, we're now set for the third of 4 heats at the Bodine Bobsled Challenge. Germany's Wolfgang Hoppe leading the way 1/10 of a second over Tuffy Latour of the United States. The British are in 3rd place, but our first sled in 10th after the second run from Jamaica, Dudley Stokes and Wayne Thomas.
Yeah, the Cool Runnings team. Stokes was the original driver for Jamaica. Good track and field athletes, man. Look at the size of Thomas. You just know he's got great athletic skills. I don't like the way he enters the sled there, Timmy. 5:02 start. Again, the Jamaicans are good athletes.
Something we'll harp on throughout the program, John. The start is really, these guys consider the most important part of the whole run.
Well, this is why they're in the sport. They're great track and field athletes. That's why they brought him in. Thomas, though, comes in, loads onto the sled too quickly. And Dudley, as you watch down here, has had some problems getting down the track. He's got a borrowed USA sled, and I don't think he's real happy with this Lake Placid track, Timmy, which is the most challenging, one of the most challenging tracks in the world.
Well, a lot of the fans here have come to watch the Jamaicans. Unfortunately, some have come to watch them crash, and they have always been great. Excitement coming down the track.
Well, he's bumping everything in sight. Dudley Stokes is certainly getting his money's worth out of this track. Whoa! He pulled it off there, Timmy, little driver error. This is a track so different than those tracks in Europe that some of these athletes, this is like his 14th trip down here this week. But I think every time down, he's just happy to get to the bottom.
56:51 for that run. You see the three-heat combined time. Now we should note that all of these foreign athletes are driving American sleds. That was part of the plan for this competition.
Well, they're worried about bringing their sleds over here and damaging them. And just take a look what happens here. He lets the sled go here, and all the way down the track, you're going to see this sled banging off the walls and the sidewalls. A little bit of a skid here out of curve 12 for Dudley. Corrects himself very nice for this 90-degree change in zig, 90-degree change in zag. Little ice spray there, so he's oversteering there. You can see the sled come off the corner. But basically, Dudley Stokes is becoming a very good bobsled pilot, Timmy.
Well, the three-time Olympian has one more run on this Placid course. Well, here is American Bill Tavares, his brakeman Rob Olson. This is Tavares, the former Lugers' first international bobsled competition. He's delighted to be in such a class field.
At first, I was real surprised that they invited me to this. That I was real grateful. And then the next surprise was give me a Bodine to drive. And it puts me in the same equipment as everybody else, as in the U.S. team. So it's a real good comparison for me. I haven't had good equipment all year since I'm just a new driver. So it's going good. I think the Bodine people were a little worried about giving me a sled at first, but we've been talking with them, and they're happy with what I'm doing, so I'm happy.
Tavares, with a military background, now lives right here in Lake Placid, New York. His brakeman, Rob Olson, new to the sport. He's from San Marcos, Texas.
Yeah, Tavares, not a very big guy, 5'7", 165 pounds, Timmy. That means he's pushing a very heavy sled. Olson, though, 6'4", 190 pounds, good track and field athlete from San Marcos, Texas, first year in the sport, and this is the second of three Bodine sleds.
Well, they were a tenth of a second in back of the Jamaicans. Not a great start.
Well, that's reflective of what Bill Tavares has to do to get competitive in the sport. Again, former Olympian in luge. He knows the ice very well. I think he's a little bit like a Gunter Huber of Italy, small in stature, but probably has great eye-hand coordination, which you got to have to be a good bobsled pilot.
That's high praise ahead of Gunther Huber, the World Cup champ from Italy. Well, the clock you see on your left, that is the split of the Jamaican sled. That will always mark the fastest time that the current sled is trying to beat, and Tavares is quickly, by a half a second, gone by the Jamaicans.
Yeah, he's not oversteering at all. A little bit there at 15, but listen to the sleds. These Bodine sleds are very quiet. I want you to notice that. These comparing the other sleds coming down the track. That's a pretty good time for Tavares.
Well, a solid bottom part of this course for Tavares and Olson, 2:47.42. They can do no worse than 9th place as they hold their position ahead of the Jamaicans.
Nice steering out of zig. Now in the crossover to zag. Look at the little bit of ice spray. That's the little bit of steering he has to do here, but look at the way it comes off and bangs. That was a good exit of zigzag by Bill Tavares. He got a little problem there in 15, nicking that coming in there, and now he has to drive off that wall there. But as you can see, Timmy, a lot of action here on the Lake Placid track.
Well, Tavares and Olson, to use a cliche, just happy to be here competing against the best in the world. And speaking of which, we look back to the top of the track, and this is Switzerland. Sled number 1, Reto Goci and Bate Seitz. John, this is the silver medalist from last year's Olympic Games in Lillehammer.
Look at the padding they're both wearing on their hips. That just is reflective of what these athletes think of the track. He's not driving his sled, and he told me this sled's pretty tight on him. That's why he's putting all that padding in there. with all the banging that they're doing. They've got great starts in Europe, Timmy. Let's see what they get here. 5:02. Looks like the Jamaican starts. He just came off a 4th place finish at the World Championships in Wittenberg, Germany. Swiss don't look like great athletes, Tim, but they always find a way to have great competitive starts. His team had the best starts in the 4-man competition over there, and again, the silver medalist from Lillehammer, that says it all.
Well, try to imagine the pressure of being a right-handed power hitter at Fenway Park. That's what the pressure of being a driver in Switzerland is. They had the gold medalist, the great Gustav Vader. If you drive a bobsled in Switzerland, you're expected to do well.
Well, he's not doing well here at all. He's got problems and not driving his own sled. It's a Hilterbrand sled, a Swiss-designed sled. That was a pretty good exit there, but look at that, Timmy. He's getting in trouble there, too.
Sliding back and forth once again. This track is unfamiliar to these athletes. So are these sleds, but nonetheless, he needed 55.99. He gets it by 0.08 of a second. Reto Goci in Switzerland have moved into the lead.
Yeah, that's not a good time, though, Timmy. He just barely beat the USA 3-sled Bill Tavares. He had problems all the way down the track, a lot of oversteering, and I guess this sled might be a little bit more sensitive than his sled that he's familiar with back in Europe. Now watch the runner tips here to see how much steering he's doing in the straightaways. Now he goes over and hits that wall there. He's smart enough not to steer away from it. He lets the sled really run on its own, but here in Lake Placid, that's not what you could do. As you can see the trouble he gets into Little S. Now he's late into Little S, which forces him to drive off this corner, comes over and bangs this wall. He's going to come down here into 12. Look at the skidding going on. That's all reflective of the mistake he made up about 100 meters before this, Timmy.
Switzerland in the lead, but the big bobbers still to come.
The U.S. Olympic Festival will air right here on Prime beginning July 22nd through the 30th. It's your opportunity to see gold medal hopefuls before the 1996 Olympics in Atlanta. After the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid, countries hosting Winter Games began building combination tracks for luge and bobsled. With the financial burden of maintaining a bobsled course, that made a lot of sense. And that issue makes the course at Lake Placid even more special. Originally built at a length of 1.5 miles for the 1932 Olympic Games, for safety reasons, the course was shortened by 0.5 mile before the 1980 Games. After those games, it was shortened yet another time to its current 7/8 of a mile, and sleds to this day still achieve speeds in excess of 70 miles an hour. Can you imagine how those drivers felt on the original mountain course? They were cut from a different fabric. Right now, let's get back to more of the Jeff Bodine Bobsled Challenge on that infamous track at Lake Placid.
The very best bobsled drivers in the world are here in Lake Placid for the Bodine Challenge, with the exception of American Brian Scheimer. The most accomplished USA driver dropped a 600-pound sled on his toe. He broke his toe. That's just the latest in a series of unfortunate incidents over the past few seasons.
Well, I guess everything that could go wrong has the last few years. We had, as you know, we were disqualified at the Olympic Games of all years to be DQ'd. And for warm runners, which I don't think in the history of bobsledding has ever been done, that must be a first. Why it happened to us, we still, aren't sure why that was. And then this year, wanting to come back and make a statement, show the world and the U.S. public that was behind us for the Bodine project and really put us over there in Lillehammer, was to come back and win a world championship medal this year. And 2 days prior to the world championships, the 600-pound bobsled fell on my foot and crushed my toe. So all those hopes went out the window as well.
From a personal standpoint and for the USA program, after all of the successes and then all of the pressure of big expectations over the last year, do you feel some pressure's off and you're going to enter a new year like now you can prove to people things again?
Well, I don't feel I really had any pressure on me. I know we winning the World Cup in '93 and the World Championships, bringing home a medal, going back to the Olympics, I felt, maybe a little bit of pressure to do well there because of, so much support for the project. And I wanted it to do well because I knew that that's what we needed, and it just didn't happen. But after that, I don't think, people were expecting us. That's why I wanted to come back this year. There was no pressure on me, to come back this year and do well, win the World Championships. But, maybe, the good Lord makes things happen for a reason. I haven't figured it out yet, but, Calgary's next year, and I think that could be our year.
World Bobsled Championships there next year, Timmy. If I was a betting man and I could find a place to put a bet down, I'd bet that Scheimer wins a medal up there next year because, remember, 2 years ago, he really dominated the sport.
Well, here's the Latvian team looking to do some domination on their own. Sandis Prūsis and Audris Plūksne. While we watch their start, we should note that was indeed Jeff Bodine in the sled with Brian Scheimer in that shot we just saw.
Yeah, Bodine, that was when they were testing the sleds up here a couple of years ago. Timmy, this has been one of the fun teams here. 5-flat start, driving a 4 or 5-year-old sled. And he's had the fastest times down on a couple of the heats from zigzag down. So he's a great driver. 5-flat start time's nothing to wave at either. So 2 good athletes here in unfamiliar territory.
Well, Prūsis actually won a World Cup event earlier this season in Germany. He comes from a long line of great bobsledders from Latvia: Ekmanis, Kippers, Olympic medalists, Poikins, Batarags, and they all come from Latvia, all the former Soviet drivers.
Yeah, well, they got that good track up in Riga. And again, this guy he's got an old 57 Chevy compared to those Bodine sleds that are on the mountain. And this is where he's been perfect, on this bottom part of the track, Timmy. He's just, I can't believe he's getting the time that he did in the first 2 heats. You get the best splits down here that tells you what type of eye-hand coordination he's got.
Well,
look at that time there.
Finish line, by 0.03 of a second, the Latvians, Prūsis and Plūksne, have moved into first place ahead of the Swiss sled.
Unbelievable. I mean, he's driving probably the worst piece of equipment in the field, and to achieve times like that. But, Timmy, 2 other things. One, he's a great pilot. The other thing is he's got good runners in the sled that I'm sure he brought with him. Look at him in zigzag here. Watch the big 90 degrees left, 90 degrees right. No ice spray at all, Timmy. He's allowing the sled to run. He bangs here at 70 miles an hour. Perfect entrance into curve 15. This guy is a great pilot. A little back pain, though.
Well, he's in the lead, but at the top, the most successful driver this season, Canada won. Pierre Lueders, his brakeman, Jack Pick. Already this year, they've won a silver medal at the World Championships, completed the World Cup trifecta, 2-man, 4-man, and overall champion. So here in Lake Placid, all the serious sliding is behind.
I think so. It's actually, we achieved everything that we wanted to achieve. Goal-wise, we had them all written down, and we achieved everything we wanted to achieve. This race here is it's different. It's fun, and maybe we're not taking it quite as serious as some of the others. But that's the thing. It's supposed to be fun, and it's something new. So it's just it's a nice experience. In Lake Placid, it's always different, anyways. You can have 2 completely different runs as we just did, and that makes it exciting. I wish some of the other tracks would be more like this one.
What's scary about these Canadians, Timmy, is that they've achieved all this success, and they're both only 24 years old.
Well, they're big athletes. That's such an integral part of the sport now. And the best starting team in the world, they had a 4.96 in the first heat.
Yeah, that was unbelievable. Sub 5 seconds.
4.91.
Wow, that's a track record here in Lake Placid. And they're here just having fun. What would they be doing, Timmy, if they're really focused? Look at the power. One thing about these 2 guys, though, they're very well trained. In Canada, they paid a lot of attention to starting the sleds. Of course, you got the benefit of the 88 Olympic track in Calgary, which has really refined the Canadian program.
Well, working in his favor, a great start and his own sled, but Lueders does not know this track that well, but a good exit.
Long straightaway above the S, and he's got himself into a skid now. Timmy had the first heat time was terrible, 55.98. Second heat, 55.34. He's looking for a good heat here. He's got a good time, good split times. Let's see if he can hold it here in the bottom.
Well, he's banging against the walls here in the final curves. You see the time he needs to beat to move into first place. Time. He does it ahead of the Latvians, 55.23. So Lueders got better and better with each trip down this course.
Well, he was terrible in the first heat, and he was right in the medals in the second and third heat, Timmy, but he's got a big hole to dig himself out of from that first heat time.
Both these guys so young, so big. They are really the future of this sport. Everyone's looking their direction.
Here he is out of shading that long straightaway above the finish. Look at the rudder tips. Let's see if he steers away from this wall here. And he doesn't. He got a bad break there, Timmy. He hit that outlet from the half-mile start. That caused him to go into a skid. He recovered very nicely. He must have, because he had a super time down below.
Well, Canada moves into first place, a great sign for the Canadian and American programs as North America bobsled continues to improve. We'll be back.
Yo, MCs!
And John Morgan back here at Mount Van Hoevenberg in Lake Placid, New York. We're down to our final 3 sleds in this, the third heat of the Bodine Bobsled Challenge. Great Britain with Mark Tout and Lenny Paul. They were in 3rd place after the 2nd heat.
Good starting team. Both these athletes got great track and field backgrounds. Tout, a former decathlon specialist, and Lenny Paul, a sprinter, 496.
Very respectable for the veteran driver who often makes up time on his way down the track.
Yeah, watch the no head movement, Timmy. Look at it. All the motions going forward. Now watch Paul as he gets in the sled. Remember the Jamaican got in real rough and sat down real quick? Look how smooth Paul gets in.
Tout, a 13-year veteran of the sport, 4-time Olympian, certainly one of the most likable athletes on the tour.
Yeah, he's your comic relief man at top of the mountain, and he's a comic relief man coming down the track right now. He's got a little bit of a skid there. Everybody's having problems in that long straightaway, Tim.
Right, he just got through curve 12 where he actually crashed during training, so that's an accomplishment.
Well, Mark Tout has been on this track many times. He knows the pitfalls of it. And here he is in that long straightaway above the finish, still find a way to a race time. 55.80 should get that easy. He does. 55.56. But Timmy, he should have done at least a 55.30 to 35 to be competitive. He dropped off some time right there.
2:46.31 for Great Britain #1. Tout at 34 years old, still a thrill seeker.
Yeah, he's still one of the best pilots in the sport, Timmy. And I tell you, compared to the tracks in Europe, I'm seeing more and more of this banging by all these good pilots here, proving to me that it is such a man versus the mountain competition here at Lake Placid. Real high on Zig. That forces him to come around late on Zag. Real high in the outlet of Zag. He's got to bang there hard. Timmy, you don't do anything like this in Europe. I mean, the tracks are so precise.
Tout in first place by a safe margin. He's guaranteed at least a top 3 position heading into the final heat. Well, we're down to our final 2 sleds, and the lone American sled in the top echelon. Tuffy Latour and Randy Jones, you see the time they need for the lead. Great story here as Tuffy has taken advantage of Brian Scheimer's misfortune by earning the #1 billing and brakeman Randy Jones.
Yeah, he's a very calm, mellow athlete, and I think that bodes well for being a good bobsled pilot. You can't be a hyperactive person and be real good at having sensitive steering at 70-mile-an-hour speeds.
Latour from Schenectady, New York, his first year on the World Cup Tour. Randy Jones out of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, former Duke University football captain.
Set. Ready. Up. And
5:03, 5:02 they had in the first 2 heats.
So that's the time of Looters on the left that they need to try and top. And a 5:03, they've been consistent, if not world class.
Yeah, the Tuffy has a little problem at the start. Jones, of course, is teamed up with Scheimer, would be around 492, 493. Tuffy just has to work a little bit more on his strength. He's got great driving skills down the track. Good bloodlines on this guy, Timmy. His grandfather competed in the 48 Olympics, finished 9th for the United States, and his grandfather and my father were national champions in this track in 1959.
So obviously good bloodline sitting right next to me as well with you, John Morgan, but some trouble for Latour in the Bodine sled.
Yeah, on that exit, he said it is late there too, Timmy, and this is unlike him. He must have jinxed him. This is probably the worst drive down I've seen him have yet this year. He's usually a very consistent driver. He's made all sorts of mistakes, Timmy. Boy, this is not the guy we saw break the track record out here in the first heat.
Well, 55.79 for Tuffy Latour. Good enough to move him into first place, but all sorts of driving errors. You've got to wonder whether he could have had a chance to move well out in front.
And he knows it, too, Tim. He had his hands on his helmet, and I think Tuffy Latour would like to be able to go back to the top and take this one over. That is not like this guy at all. He's probably one of the most consistent drivers I've seen out of the U.S. program in years.
Well, he's been doing all of his training over the last couple of years right here at Mount Van Hoevenberg, unlike the Wolfgang Hoppies of the world.
Here's where he started, too low and shady. Look at all the other runner marks. He's below that. Now look at the adjustment there. Look at the way that swale, the sled went back up. Now he's in a skid all the way down. Timmy, this is where his problem started. On the exit of Shady, where he wants to have the perfect accelerator point, he actually decelerated there, Tim.
Well, Latour, a chance to regroup with 1 run remaining. He's in first place, but we look to the top. Wolfgang Hoppe, Rennie Hanneman, perhaps the greatest bobsled driver in the history of the sport. And John Morgan, I don't exaggerate when I say that.
Well, he's got 6 Olympic medals. He's got 7 World Championship titles. He's got 37 total Olympic, World Championship, and European titles. Timmy, the accolades go on and on. He's over here driving an American sled. Got his runners. He's in the twilight of his career, everybody says, but he just came off his 7th World Championship title. And he's over here spanking the Americans in a borrowed sled on their course.
4.97, the best start of his 3 runs so far.
Big, powerful man, always has good competitive starts. Hanneman, though, is 6'3". Watch the way he enters the sled. Very quickly, cat-like movements in the sled quickly. Now let's see the master. Now, this is an American sled. It's a Dresden sled, though. The Americans bought it from the East German jet factory that used to build East German sleds.
Great exit right there, right down the center of the track.
This is him. He's brought over his own runners. And, Timmy, this is it. This is the master. This is it's the Michael Jordan,
The Babe Ruth of bobsledding.
This is it. I mean, he's unbelievable. He's only had about 12 practice trips on the track this week, and he's smoking everybody.
Well, that's Tuffy Latour's time on the left, and by a huge margin. Wolfgang Hoppe has stayed in first place, 2:45.68. Now, John Hoppe is the 4-man world champion this season, but did not race all season long or check that just one event in 2-man. How he can make that transformation so quickly is just a display of his experience.
Doesn't matter if there's 3 men behind him or 1, Timmy. He's still the same type of pilot coming down the track.
A long-time brakeman in Rennie Hanneman, so some cohesion amongst his team as well.
Look at the runner tips. Look at this. Everybody else been banging off the walls. Look at Wolfgang Hoppe, the master. Through the toughest part of the track, he hasn't banged yet, Timmy. This is why he's the top of the leaderboard.
Well, the one man who can prove John Morgan wrong, maybe this isn't such a tough track. It's Wolfgang Hoppe in first place, the Germans leading the way, but right behind them, the United States in second place. 44 hundredths of a second back. The British are in third. Canada still within medal striking distance. As for the rest of the Mount Van Hovenberg survivors, currently in 5th place, Latvia number 1, followed by Switzerland, USA 3, and the Jamaicans sitting some 4.5 seconds back. Speaking of which, when we return, we'll talk to the man, the myth, and the Cool Runnings legend, Jamaican driver Dudley Stokes. Placid, New York, where the weather is always cool, man. Speaking of which, a lot of these fans have come here to watch Jamaican driver Dudley Stokes. Stokes is always a popular driver, but he has got high goals in this sport and is very disappointed with this past season.
Well, yes, the season was not as good as we expected, mostly because we got behind very early in terms of our organization, to do with the sleds, transportation, all that sort of stuff, and in our training program for the athletes. So at the beginning of the year, we weren't ready to go, and we just never catch up if you start out like that. So we were behind all the way, and we didn't get the results to get the seeding we'd have wished for in the World Championships. We went there and made a go of it anyway.
Stability, cohesion in this sport. You've had Ricky and Winston and the same guys. How important has that been to your team? Some of those guys.
Well, this is the second year for Winston and Wayne. Ricky has been in 3 years, so they're still, relatively young, and they have a lot further to go in the sport. On the other hand, they, we're all really part-timers, and I think we have come about as far as we can on the big part-time basis that we're doing this. I think we have the potential to go much further, but it's going to take a really professional effort. I genuinely think that myself and Jamaica Bobsled can be medal contenders in Nagano, and this is what I'm working towards. And it's going to take many pieces, pulling together the cash, the sponsorship support. We have mostly in place the technical support, the minds to figure it out, and we have the athletes. Now the only piece really missing is the cash. If we put all of that together, I think for the next 3 years we can do really well, culminating in Nagano with a challenge for medal. And after that, I think that will be enough for me.
The sport of bobsledding, of course, has a lot of very talented black athletes, yet there hasn't been much of an influx into the other Winter Olympic sports. Why would you say that is?
It's a matter of opportunity, I think. And by opportunity, I'm thinking specifically of the cost of winter sports. And, you know, I don't see really a great deal of black athletes being able in the very near future to become involved under their own steam. I think with bobsled, with cool runnings, with you know, blacks in the snow being portrayed more and more, you know, the American team, the British team, the Canadian teams, as well as Jamaica, all have these athletes now, then that youngsters will now start thinking, you know, maybe there's something there for me. That's the first step. The second step, big hurdle, I think, is going to be when they discover, you know, how much it costs to ski or to play hockey or so on. And that's going to be difficult. It has been easy in bobsled for blacks to become involved because of the, you know, the disciplines of bobsled, the speed and the power, the start and so on, flow naturally into that. It's going to be more difficult to get into the skating and so on, but you know, you have Bodine from France, who is African and so on. You know, there is nothing inherent or you know, there's no genetic reason for blacks not to be involved. It's a matter of opportunity and cost. That's the way I see it.
The backlash from Cool Runnings, did this take a burden off of you because you proved your point when you guys were in the sport for, or did it put more pressure on you because more eyes were on you?
I was happy with Cool Runnings in that it got across the spirit of what we tried to do. I really appreciated that fact and that was broadcast to so many people and that so many people understood it. And I think, you know, there's a message in there for all people, all races, creeds, colors, and that I'm happy about. I don't think that the fact is that not that many people are fans of bobsled. It's a sad fact, but it's a fact. And not many people, you know, care about where you finish or you know, whether you crash or you finish or so on. It's just not a big deal on the mega scale that Cool Runnings is a big deal. For bobsledding, it's unfortunate, but that's the fact of where the sport is now. And people who come out to see us really because we're there much more than because of where we are and where we finish.
The respect factor, have you finally gained it amongst the drivers, and do you find yourself to be a contemporary of the other drivers around the world now?
Yes, I am. I think so, and I'm enjoying this brief lull, because I'm sure once we start winning, we'll be alone again. But for now, it's you know, really good friendship.
Dudley Stokes, full of confidence and most importantly, full of a love of the sport of bobsled that exemplifies what all of these athletes are doing here. Dudley leads off the fourth and final heat of action from Lake Placid when we return.
Next week on Prime's Olympic Odyssey, we're going to the fights as the nation's best boxer.
And John Morgan back here on a gorgeous Adirondack Mountain day in Lake Placid, New York, getting ready for the final run of the Bodine Bobsled Challenge after 3 heats. Wolfgang Hoppe of Germany leading the way by 44/100ths of a second ahead of Tuffy Latour of the United States. Then Mark Tout and Pierre Luters, and the back four is headed by Latvian Sandis Prūsis in 8th place, 4.43 seconds back. Jamaica won and Dudley Stokes. And all eyes to the top of the track right now. You see the crowd, John. They're all waiting for the Jamaican run.
Yeah, yesterday in the finish building, Timmy, Disney provided a bunch of Cool Runnings videos, and Dudley was down there signing them left and right for the kids, and there's not one kid that he didn't sign a video for.
In the back of the crowd there, Mark Tout, the British driver, taking a picture of Dudley Stokes. A lot of camaraderie in this sport as the Jamaicans are off and running cool.
Yeah, there's that 5:02 start again, same as he had in the first heat. Dudley's only problem is he oversteers, and Timmy, you're going to see this too as soon as he gets in the sled on the start. But again, look at the athleticism here. He was right when he said the Jamaicans have the athletes. There's no doubt about it with the track and field. They just need the technical support and, most importantly, the cash.
Well, what I'd like to talk about, because of a lack of cash, Dudley was only in 2 races this year on the World Cup, did not crack the top 20. Is he dreaming a little when he says he wants to be on the podium in 1998?
Well, I don't know if he's, he might be dreaming when talking to a lot of people, but I respect his attitude. It depends where if that Nagano track's a very, very simple track, all dependent on the start times, he could do something, Timmy. Because, again, they've got the athletes to have those good starts. They need a little infusion of cash.
Well, great speed down the bottom part of this track, and not a bad time for the Jamaicans, 56.69, so they are through and safely down with their second-best run of the 4-heat race.
A lot of people were saying Dudley Stokes would come to Lake Placid, never make it down the track, Timmy. He had 12 practice trips, 4 race trips, so he's, 16 for 16, and I think he proved a lot of people wrong. He's not a bad pilot. He's learning not to steer the sled, but here in Shady, he lets the sled get away from him a little bit, and it climbed up there and hit. Now he comes down the straight. Look at the rudder tips, like Ricochet Rabbit. He's starting to bounce off the walls, trying to steer away from him a little bit. Timmy, he's probably unfamiliar with that sled. It shows it right there.
Well, a total time of 3 minutes, 46.80 seconds. That is the time in which the following 7 sleds will all try to better. Here's USA sled number 3, the driver, Bill Tavares, Rob Olson on the brakes. You see the time they need, 59.38. To give you an example, all of their previous 3 runs have been in the 55-second range, so they're sitting in good shape, at least to pass the Jamaicans.
Yeah, this is the first of a couple Bodine sleds we're going to see here in this heat. And again, if Tavares figures out how to improve his start times, he's going to be a good pilot. I think anybody that's come over from luge, to me, knows the ice. But look at the disparity in size here. Look how small Tavares is. Look how big Olson is. On the other side of the coin, you got Looters and Pick, which are, similar 200-pound people.
Now, we had a chance to talk to the Bodine people down at the bottom of the track. There was a lot of hoopla when these sleds entered the sport a year ago, but after the disappointing Lillehammer results, people wondered whether Bodine would bail, but he's still very much believing in this project and the sport.
Well, he's believing in it, and I think the athletes are in it. I mean, Scheimer is all over his 2-man sled and 4-man. He really believes in it, and I think the Bodine project is right in that next level of the learning curve. I think they got a chance to really improve next year, Timmy. I think that's going to be real important to them, the results next year.
Well, across the finish line, easily into first place, 55.79 for the 4th and final heat. And the 4-heat time, 3:43.21. Tavares, USA number 3, in first place. Now, John, compare bobsledding to auto racing. Take the motor away. How important is the technical end of this sport?
Well, there's a lot of the frame and the steering. There's a lot of similarities to the sport. But most importantly, the people that build those race cars are now building these bobsleds, and they both have something in common. They're built to go fast. So the aerodynamic features and stuff, Timmy, a lot in common between the two sports. Here, you're a little inexperienced by Tavares. You try to steer away from that wall and get into a little bit of a whip around. And look at the way those runners are bouncing around that ice, Tim. That's just 30, 40 hundredths of time he just lost right there.
Tavares has successfully completed, and more importantly, safely completed his first ever international race against the best drivers in the world. Speaking of which, we go back to the top. Switzerland number 1, Reto Goci, Bate Seitz. In 4 World Cup races in the 2-man competition this year, they never finished out of the top 5. John, they entered this 4th run in 6th place.
Yeah, he had a bad 2nd and 3rd heat, Timmy. I think the track's a little intimidating to Reto. It's the first time he's been here. It's so different than anything he slides on in Europe. And, of course, they're getting themselves ready for the World Cup 2-man event that's going to be here in December of '95. Good starting team. He's at low 5s. 5:06, so that's the slowest of the 4 starts.
The 29-year-old Goci normally slides with the Ackland brothers, either Donat or Guido. This is a new brakeman in sights.
Well, it's his number 2-man on his 4-man team, and look at the good technique they both have. Get in the sled early, but the 5:06 start, Timmy's not going to help him to really move up.
The Swiss sliders are so known for their driving, and that St. Moritz track, the only natural track left in the world. This a refrigerated track here in Lake Placid.
Oh, he's clean, Timmy. He's very clean. This is probably his best heat, it looks like. No mistakes in 12 like the last time. Now into zigzag, little high, bang, straight. This is perfect. Boy, Goci didn't do this at all in the 2nd and 3rd heats. He's got a good time here, looks like.
That's the American split on the left.
Whoa.
But, wow, a great heat by Reto Goci, 55.31. Just proof that these drivers who don't know the Van Hovenberg track are quickly learning it.
That's the reason they're here, Timmy, to get that World Cup 2-man experience for next year. Goci, though, super time down the track.
Out of breath.
Hey, Zach.
He knows it, too, Tim.
You can hear him.
There he is in zigzag. A little high in zig. Watch this quick transition over to zag, though. No ice spray. Look at that, Tim. Clean. Lets the sled bang here. The runners stay straight. Boy, was he perfect in the speed part of the course.
A big smile and handshake for the Olympic silver medalist. Reto Goci has finally learned to conquer this course. We'll be back with John Morgan as we're down to our final 5 sleds. The top sliders shuffling for the top prize money. Latvia #1, Sandis Prūsis and Andris Plūksna. They were in 5th place after each of the 2nd and 3rd heat.
Great times from zigzag down, Timmy. Great driving ability by this driver, Sandis Prūsis. Again, he's driving an older sled compared to what everybody else has, and he's really been magical on the speed part of the course.
Well, the Latvian history we mentioned during the 3rd run, Sintis Ekmanis, a medalist in the 1984 Olympics, coaches these guys, but Jānis Kippers, who won a gold and a bronze, has been stolen away by the Americans.
Yeah, he's coaching the United States, and if you remember Jānis Kippers, he was the Russian pilot who won the gold medal in the 2-man at the Calgary Olympics in '88. He also won a bronze in the 4-man, beating out the USA's Brent Rushlow out of that bronze by only 0.02 of a second. Irony here at Timmy, now he's coaching the Americans.
Well, Prūsis and Plūksna, 5th place. They've had start times of 5:07, 5:07, and 5 even. They'll probably need under 5 seconds in order to compete with the sleds still to come.
You can just hear the rattles off that piece of equipment. 5:03.
5:03, 100th off the best start. And a skid right there near the top, John.
Yeah, that's something you can't do up top, but everybody's doing that, that little curve, tricky curve 1. Look at the brakeman, though, Polinsko. Watch how he enters the sun. Watch his technique. Let's see if he can look at that. Driver and brakeman down at the same time, to me. Good start technique.
Well, Prūsis ended up 8th in the World Cup standings, also finished 8th in the World Championships, though I remarked earlier he did win 1 World Cup event. So inconsistency this season, as he's experiencing on this run.
Yeah, but he recovered very nicely there. Let's watch, see if he bangs here before the 12 corner. Yeah, he's got some problems. Could have set himself up wrong for zigzag. He's going to be late. Oh, look at the spray there, Timmy. Bad mistake at a zigzag. A lot of driving. This isn't like the 2 heats he had previous to this.
Well, the time on the left is the one he'll need to better the Swiss, and he does, 55.78, so everything has been holding to form. No sled has been able to get by another. 342.42, the Latvians sit in 1st place.
Yeah, but
Sandis Prūsis, they're all having a good time here at Lake Placid. And next up at the top, you see they were in 4th place. Pierre Lueders and Jack Pick, Canada sled #1, the World Cup champions, the World Championship silver medalists. If anyone is going to push the limit in the final run, it could very well be Lueders.
Well, that 55.98 in the 1st heat, Timmy, was his worst run. He followed it up with a 55.34 and a 55.23. And he needs a similar time to move up. And he can have that, Timmy, because he had a 4:91 start time in the heat previous to this. 4:94.
94, not a bad start. Now, John, as we watch the replay, keep in mind that these guys are pushing a 600-pound sled, and they're sprinting on ice.
Yeah, well, they get the little tiny spike shoes that helps out with the grip. But it's still not an easy endeavor to jump in the sled like that. The brakeman's got to get in with cat-like movements, not to alter the sled back and forth. And this is where Lueders allows the sled to run. He's been coached very well by Hans Hildebrand, the great Swiss pilot who's now the Canadian coach. And again, Tim, he's only 24 years old, and he's clean.
Terrific exit down the center of the track. You lose time every time you bounce against a wall, which he just touched there.
Yeah, Lueders looks good and clean here. Let's watch him on the exit. Any ice spray? Hardly any at all. Pierre, there's some spray. No problem out of 15. He hasn't straightened it out yet. He should get that time easy. 55.23. Timmy, same exact time as he had the previous heat. So if Lueders could have eliminated that 1st heat, Tim, he'd be challenging for the gold himself.
341.78 by about 0.6 of a second. He moves into 1st place. Now we'll see if he can move into the medals. He was in 4th place entering this final run.
Yeah, Loaders.
He moves into first place. He's now in the money. We'll see if he finishes in the medals. Have a seat, Pierre, and watch, because the top 3 sleds are coming down when we return. To find the first time sleds were zipping down this Van Hovenberg track, but now the track is world class, and so are the drivers, and we're down to our final 3 competitors in this, the final heat of competition of the Bodine Bobsled Challenge. Veteran Mark Tout of England has been around the world for several years of bobsledding and reveres this track.
This is about the toughest there is. I mean, Altenburg in Germany is tough, but it's a different kind of toughness, you know. In here, this track can just pop up and just bite you when you think it's all going really, really well. But not so much from the danger part is the losing time. And if you can see that, you know, Luders, for instance, he went nearly a second faster from his first to second run. Gucci went nearly a second slower. I went half a second faster. And they're just driving errors and driving mistakes. So that's the good thing about the track.
Yeah, it's great for the competitors to come over and say that about this track. And again, I referred to it in my open, Timmy, as one of the last great bobsled tracks of the world because there's a danger element.
Third place entering this final run. They'll need a strong start, at least challenging that 494.
And 499, to me, a competitive start. Look how clean he is there in that exit. Everybody else having problems there. That shows his experience. Again, Tout, 6'2", decathlon background. Lenny Paul. Both these guys came from the being British soldiers in the track and field program with the British military, and they come into bobsledding with some very good athletic backgrounds.
Well, Tout and all of the drivers jockeying for about $25,000 in prize money, so every 100th of a second counts as he makes his way down the track.
Yeah, as clean as he's been in all 4 heats. So Tout looking pretty smooth here in the bottom. Let's watch for the ice spray here in zigzag. Zig, not bad at all.
Great speed. He's got about a quarter of a second lead over the Canadian sled that just came down. That's the time he needs on the left to move into first place. He does it. 55.35. Great Britain has moved into the lead.
Great heat, Timmy. That's reflective of that great exit of Shady. No ice spray and zigzag. So Mark Tout, when the money was there, he reached up and grabbed it because he's at least guaranteed third place in this competition.
Now, Tout finished 4th place in the 4-man in the World Championships, but handling his own up high there in the 2-man.
In zigzag, he's letting it go, though, but watching Zag, look at the back end of that sled come around and airborne. A little bit of ice spray there. Watch him hit here and let the sled just bounce. Ricochet Rabbit doesn't touch the runners. Smooth trip for Mark Tout and Lenny Paul.
341.66, guaranteed at least a medal here in Lake Placid. In second place, entering the final heat, Tuffy Latour, USA sled number 1. Though Latour's family grew up in this area, Latour actually traveled a great distance to get involved in the sport of bobsledding.
Well, I was stationed in England with the U.S. Air Force, and I was on temporary duty in Germany, and I just happened to open a base newspaper one day, and I saw bobsledding in there. Before that, I heard about my grandfather bobsledding, but I never saw a bobsled up close or had been out to the track or anything like that. And brought into the Air Force. They sent me back all the information I needed. I came over to Lake Placid from England on leave and tried out for the team. And Link Sanyo was in Calgary at driving school, and then it just propelled from there.
Come on, baby.
And John, it continues to propel because Tuffy just qualified this year for the World Cup, found himself doing very well from the start of the season right on.
Come on.
Well, he cut his eye teeth on this track here, and if you start driving here, those other tracks are a little bit easier to do well at, Timmy. He's a great pilot. He lacks at the start, but 5:01. I'll give him credit there. Him and Jones just came down in the best start of the 4 heats. Look at Jones's technique here. Tuffy will get in the sled pretty early. Tuffy's got too long of a stride there. Jones, good track and field background, football player at Duke University. Power and speed you need. That's why they had a 5:01 start there, Tim.
Well, Latour has about a 0.2 of a second lead over the British sled, which sits in first place. That can be an eternity in the sport of bobsledding.
Well, remember the last heat, he had a horrific ride down the track. A little bit of skid there. He corrected it very well, and he's smooth here. This is what he should be able to do, is master the bottom part of this track. But, boy, he was bad there in curve 12, too, Tim. He knows the track better than anybody. He's been down more than anybody else in the last 4 years.
Well, this is the record holder on the track, one of the few that has had a time of less than 55 seconds. He doesn't do it here, but a respectable 55.16, hand thrust in apparent victory as Latour has moved into first place.
55-16, same time they had in the first heat, Timmy. Track conditions have deteriorated. For him to come down and post that type of time, awesome trip for USA 1. Watch him here in zigzag, though. Little steering here in the crossover. Watch the back end of the sled in the transition. Great transition there. No ice spray. That's where he nailed it, Tim. That's probably the best exit and entrance of zigzag we've seen so far.
Well, handshakes and hugs all around amongst these bobsledders. A long season winding down, and it will end with this sled. In first place, entering the final heat, Germany #1, Wolfgang Hoppe, the brakeman, Rennie Henneman.
He's got a big lead, 44 hundredths of a second lead. That's not what you want to give this guy with one heat to go.
He needs a 55.60 to move into first place. John, the irony of all of this is Hoppe, despite all of his accomplishments, says winning means nothing. He's in this for the love of the sport.
Well, Timmy, bobsledding is an addicting sport. You take your first ride, you walk to the parking lot and never see it again, or everything else is irrelevant in your life. That's what's happened to Hoppe in his lifetime. All he's matched up with is 3 gold medals, 2 silvers, and a bronze in the Olympics, and 7 world titles. And, Timmy, the reason he's so successful, the good start times, good techniques at the start. But where this guy's the MVP is driving down the track.
Well, by 1/100th of a second, he's ahead at the latest split. He has some time to play with. About a half a second lead over Latour.
Look at this guy. Look at him. He's playing right there, Timmy. He's just looking for the safe line, not the fast line. Now he's at a curve 12. Watch him in zigzag. Let's look for the ice spray if we see any. No, look at that, Timmy. He's such a master. Oh, there's some problems, though. As soon as I gave him some accolades, he made a mistake. But he should have that, Timmy.
The 37-year-old former East German is considered the best driver in the world, and he is just that today in Lake Placid, New York. 3:41.13. Wolfgang Hoppe and teammate Rennie Henneman have captured the Bodine 2-man bobsled challenge.
No, I don't think anybody's embarrassed about losing to this guy. There's a little congratulations from Tuffy. Watch him here in this corner here, diving out of the big shady corner, probably like nobody else can. Look at the runner tips here, Timmy. He's playing with the sled right now. See that? See, look at that little adjustment he made right there. Look at that. He's just trying to look for a safe line there. It's not a fast line, but with 4,500 lead that he had, he could have that safe line, not the fast line.
Wolfgang Hoppe of Germany. It may not be as impressive as his trunk full of gold medals from the Olympics, but some prize money and a big victory on a tough track. 1/1500ths of a second back, the USA and Tuffy Latour. The British third, Canada 1, and Pierre Lueders in fourth place. American Bill Tavares ends up 7th. The Jamaicans win the popularity contest, and when we return, we'll wrap things up. All done in an impressive day for the Americans. As we check out the final standings, the world champion Wolfgang Hoppe wins the competition ahead of Tuffy Latour, USA sled #1. Mark Tout and the Great Britain sled ends up in 3rd place. And as far as the other Americans in his first ever international competition, a solid 7th place effort for Bill Tavares, USA sled #3. And right now we're joined by a very solid effort. The team from the United States, silver medal, Tuffy Latour and Randy Jones. Great job, guys. Tuffy, it's been a slow development, top 10 in the World Championships, and now just behind Hoppe in 2nd place. Your thoughts about that?
It's definitely a great feeling to be right behind the best bobsledder in the world, and look forward to next year. Be a good season for me.
Now, the success here in Lake Placid, do you attribute to a bit of home cooking or the fact that you are indeed emerging as a driver?
Definitely some home track advantage, and I'm definitely emerging as a driver.
John?
Well, I got to ask Randy Jones. Everybody else got a little slower in the last heat. You guys get a 5:01, your best start in the 4th heat. You needed it because the British had just come down in a good heat.
Exactly. I didn't want to come in, being track record holder, then come out, 3rd place, maybe even 4th place. So had to, you know, dig down, reach deep, and grit it out.
Hey, great competition. I think the Europeans finally got used to the track. What were they telling you up top the last couple days? Everybody adjusting to the track?
Yeah, everybody was adjusting the track very well, especially Dudley Stokes from Jamaica. He drove very well here.
Okay.
Well, great job, guys. Congratulations.
Thanks.
Enjoy the summer, and we'll see you out on the circuit next year. That's
right.
Tuffy Latour and Randy Jones, silver medalists here in Lake Placid. And one last time, I'm joined by the Sultan of sliding sports, John Morgan. John, your thoughts about the Americans in this competition as a whole?
Well, you know, two young pilots in Tuffy Latour and Bill Tavares did very well. Tuffy had a bad third heat, but Timmy, he did, you know, everything else. He came down that last heat, had a great start time, had the best time of the day in the last heat. He's a pressure player. He's the guy who's got the eyes and the hands to be a good pilot. If he improves his start times, he's definitely a threat to be a great match with Brian Scheimer. I think it's a great step forward for the United States.
Well, something we'll keep an eye on in the years to come. Thanks very much, John.
Think bobsledding and lugeing are only done in the winter time? Think again. The Olympic Sports Complex in Lake Placid has made it possible to experience the thrill of a bobsled and a luge run in the summer heat.
Before, all they had was just the tour, which is a great thing, but now we can do both luge rides in the winter, summer, and it's great to see a lot of people out here.
The bobsleds and luge sleds are both mounted on rubber wheels. Summer bobsledders can reach speeds of over 45 miles per hour on the half-mile course. Not to worry, though, the sleds are piloted by professionals. Just sit back and enjoy the ride. The luge sleds are piloted by the public, and brave sliders can reach speeds up to 30 miles per hour in the fully enclosed luge. One of the first to try the sleds this morning, three-time Olympian Cammie Myler.
You've got the same kind of steering capabilities in the sled. You experience the curves, get up on the curves a little bit, and just really kind of get a feel for what the track is all about.
The summer bobsled ride is available Saturday through Wednesday, and the luge sled operates 7 days a week. Summer is quickly winding down, so don't let this golden opportunity pass you by.
Spectacle. Mike Perlow found out that the Olympic region does have